Broadcasting live. It's America's longest running talk show on computers. It's Computer America, bringing you the biggest names in technology with guest interviews, new products, and your emails. Listen live at computeramerica.com on any device around the world. Email the show at live@computeramerica.com or find us on social media. Be sure to check out our website for contests, giveaways, show notes, live video stream, podcasts, and more. You're listening to Computer America.
Hello and welcome into the Computer America Show. We are the nation's longest running, nationally syndicated radio talk show on computers and technology. Thank you for joining us. I'm your host, Ben Crossman, and I hope all of you are having a great day because we have a great show planned for you, where we will be in the second part of the program doing computer and technology news, and plenty to talk about there. A lot of stories, including an update from, if you want to talk about software gore. Okay, that's completely the wrong phrasing. I apologize for saying that right in the outset. But we'll be talking about what happened with Uber and the unfortunate fatal accident. So it's so we have that, a bunch of other news stories, and wow, what a great way to start the show. So, but in the first part of the program, we, of course, have an interview, as usual, and we are excited because today's interview is going to be with a company called DataLocker. And we're going to be talking about, kind of what they do, how they do it, and encryption, security, that kind of thing. It should be a very enlightening conversation. So before we get started, a couple of things, including computeramerica.com. That's where you'll find everything and anything having to do with today's show. So be that, a link to our guest website or any articles, videos that we show on the video portion. Just, hey, if you're busy, you can't keep up, don't worry, we have you covered in the show notes. Check those out. And while you're there, be sure to check out the social media contest brought to you by Logitech, and check out the live video stream brought to you by OWC. So with that being said, let's go ahead and get our guest in here. So DataLocker, again, to tell us all about themselves and what they do, we have the technical support engineer for DataLocker, Mr. Sunil Mohinani. I'm sure I butchered that, but let's go ahead and get him in here. So Sunil, how you doing? Welcome onto Computer America. How you doing?
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, our pleasure. So let's go ahead and get started with a little bit of background on DataLocker and on yourself. How did you find yourself, working with DataLocker?
Sure. DataLocker has been around for just over 10 years, and they are definitely one of the leading players in hardware encryption and software encryption, as well as central management of encrypted devices. And my background was mostly with technical support, and then I knew someone who had a connection with DataLocker, and that's how I got involved.
Hey, that's a great way to get involved. So, I find that a lot of people that come up through tech support, they have a very different kind of approach to a lot of things, especially when it comes from people who, went to college, got their 4-year degree, got a couple certifications, and jumped right into, kind of those designer level things. This is just an aside, but it seems like people who come up through tech support, they, maybe when it comes to developing software or developing a feature, they may think, this would be a really great idea. And then your tech support background kicks in and goes, well, our tech support is going to be flooded with people who have no idea how that works. That sounds good on paper, not great in practice.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that one. It brings an interesting perspective to bring that background to the table, because you're right. There's a lot of times where from someone who's either a developer or a designer, the extreme technical aspects of creating something is fantastic, but then when it gets to the end user's hands, it's far more complicated than practical, and they end up just not using the features. So it's been a pretty cool journey for me to get to where I'm at, and DataLocker is a fantastic company to work with, especially with the ever-changing landscape and rapidly developing landscape of encryption.
Right. Let's talk about that. Great segue. You should do radio. Where encryption, it's a very important topic because it's It's becoming easier, or at least it's more prevalent. We are hearing more and more, especially on the consumer side, about the need for end-to-end encryption and things like that. So, like, even if you don't know precisely the reason why you need encryption, you're hearing more and more about how you're being offered encryption. So let's get a bit of background on encryption. Just why does it seem to be such a hot button topic where the idea of keeping things hidden, that goes back as far as time, time untold. Why is encryption now such a big deal?
Right. I think probably the main aspect that it's such a big deal now is because more and more of our daily lives are moving online, which is far less tangible. So, maybe you should go back to time untold. If you're going to encrypt something or keep it hidden from plain sight, you physically take an item and obscure it from sight. And now that you have interactions online, you have whether it's cloud computing or your online banking, you're going to do shopping online, you store some of your personal information online. I mean, depending on which company you work with, maybe you get your pay stub online. Now I think it's addressing people in more aspects of their day-to-day lives to make sure that encryption is not only available, but it's also good encryption that's being used on these interactions.
Right, and you just used the term right there, good encryption. If you could flesh out that idea of good encryption, bad encryption, is there such a thing as good encryption, bad encryption, or because we hear all the time from, let's see, the FBI just lied about how many phones they needed to unlock because they're all encrypted. We hear about bad encryption when it comes to terrorists, national security, or criminals hiding things. And at the same time, you just mentioned, the idea of good encryption where, hey, you have stuff that you'd like to keep to yourself. Is there a balancing act there, or is encryption is encryption?
Yeah, I guess I was more referring to the level
use case.
Of quality of encryption.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, rather than like a moral judgment on the encryption being used. Yeah, I mean, there's plenty of examples of poor quality encryption that someone might or might use, or just basic levels of encryption that people would run into. One example is if you're browsing online, a web page that is an HTTP web page versus an HTTPS web page, which is a secure connection versus a non-secure connection. That's a real simple approach that you have data that's being sent unencrypted.
Mm-hmm.
That means it's not obscured. Anyone could really easily intercept that information, or you have data that through an HTTPS web page is being encrypted and obscured from potentially malicious attempts.
Right. So, and who's impacted by all this? Because, at DataLocker, I see here you make a lot of products. Looks to be, again, kind of on the corporate side. They're pretty, to say heavy duty would, being an understatement. If you're watching the video portion, I mean, your hard drives, they look super secure, and at the same time, they look like they could, you could drop a rock on them and nothing would happen. When it comes to encrypting data and, making sure that if it's stored somewhere, it's encrypted, is this a problem just for consumers about, your bank statements, or is this also a problem for, kind of bigger companies just for everyday tasks?
Yeah, so kind of both. There's a lot of people that are impacted by the availability or even the quality of encryption that's being used. You mentioned for corporations, a lot of what DataLocker focuses on is providing hardware and software solutions that can help companies and corporations not only secure the data that they want secured, that could be financial records, trade secrets, development details, just stuff that they don't want people to access. Everything from files that they would put on a flash drive or a hard drive to files that they would want to put on some sort of device and then give to somebody else.
Right.
All the way to corporations and organizations that are impacted by federal regulations. So healthcare corporations have to meet a certain standard of encryption and how they deal with protected, like HIPAA. All
right.
the HIPAA regulations and laws. Yeah, that's a huge deal that requires a hospital or other companies to maintain their data in a secure enough sense so that people's information isn't compromised. So the corporations are definitely impacted hugely in a lot of different ways, whether it's financial benefits for them or regulations that they're required to keep. But then also every day, us consumers, people are impacted by the availability or the lack of quality encryption. And this could be anything. Again, I mentioned online interactions, shopping.
Right.
If you buy something from a website that doesn't use any sort of encryption on their website, you're putting your information at risk. I mean, if you bank with a bank that doesn't have encryption on their connection,
so
any of your personal information that you might share, yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, we, for, I'd say the past 6 months to a year, we've been hearing more and more, and recently a lot less, about the idea that you need a VPN for a secure encrypted connection to these, to these different services, or at least, talk about the idea of a VPN just real quick. Are you talking about, and this can branch into a conversation about device encryption to file encryption to, just kind of data transferring encryption? Let's see, is a VPN necessary? Should people be encrypting their files or their devices? What are some of the best ways to kind of get encryption, kind of into our lives?
Yeah, well, let me start with the explanation of device encryption versus file encryption, and then we'll go from there into the question about VPNs.
Sure.
So two big pieces there. Device encryption means that every file that's on the device, let's take a flash drive, for example. We have a 16 gig flash drive. If you do device encryption, every file that's put on that device, once the device is locked or encrypted, they're all encrypted together. And when the device is unlocked, all the files are available together. This is advantageous for a flash drive specifically, or possibly even if you're going to do a hard drive, in that you don't have to worry about, did I encrypt that file or not this file, or is this folder safe, or is this folder not safe? But it could be difficult. Something to remember is that once the file moves off of the device,
right,
the device encryption doesn't impact it anymore. So it's something to keep in mind. And then there's file encryption, which is a specific file you're selecting more often than not with the software. And you're saying, I want this file to be encrypted and only unlocked when I use the software to unlock it. That could be advantageous if you need to send a specific file through like an email, or you're going to transfer it to someone through an FTP online, and you're going to encrypt the file and they have to use a key to unlock it. That could be advantageous there. So that's the difference between device encryption, the entire device is encrypted or decrypted at the same time, and file encryption. So there's pros and cons with both of them. And for a lot of people, I would say think through the kind of information that you have. So if you're working with a lot of the last thing I want to do is say the absolutes in this, because for each person there's going to be different approaches that they have as to the importance of the files that they're working with. If they're working with, I'm going to use a silly example. If they're working with a Word document that has all of the all of their garden planting tips,
okay,
right? Plant tomatoes outside, plant strawberries over here. They might not be nearly as concerned with making sure that file is encrypted.
Right.
On the other hand, if they have a Word document that has all of the birthdays of their family members, because they want to remember to get birthday presents, that might be something that they would want to keep protected, because that's information that could be used maliciously against them if someone were to get a hold of it. So, bear in mind the files that they're working with and approach it that way. As far as which files I would recommend encrypting.
Right. No. And of course, I think it gets a bit more all-encompassing when you get into the corporate sphere, because, I think anything internal, they like to keep internal and make sure that it happens. But okay, let's talk real quick about some of the devices that DataLocker kind of offers, because we're looking at your website, and I'm kind of eager to start talking about some of this hardware, if you wouldn't mind. What makes these USB flash drives and hard drives? Because I think we've all, gone to I don't know, no one's paying me right now, Office Depot, why not? And they let's see, and they pick up a USB flash drive. What makes your USB secure flash drive other than your logo, and it looks very cool, or your external hard drive, which looks very ruggedized? What makes them so secure? Is it software that you have preloaded onto there? Is it the failure rate? I mean, what goes into a secure device that you offer?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I'm going to jump back to something you mentioned earlier. Full disclosure, please don't drop a rock on our drives. They are rugged, but still not advised.
Good call.
One of the key advantages that DataLocker brings to the table with their drives is something called hardware encryption. And the difference between hardware encryption and software encryption is that the authentication and the encryption of the files all on the drive all happens on the drive itself. And this provides an extra layer of security in that the computer itself that you're connecting the device to doesn't actually see any of the interactions of the drive, which is great because that means that if there's malicious software on the computer, it can't intercept what the keys are. If there's someone else that's like using a keylogger or trying to access it, all the encryption happens within the device itself. It keeps it within a bubble, which is a huge advantage. So the hardware encryption's a plus.
Right.
Additionally, and I'm going to avoid. I mean, there's management aspects of the devices which a lot of corporations might be interested in.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll mention those briefly, but then I'll talk about the personal level as well.
Sure.
From a corporate point of view, having a centralized software where you can remotely manage the devices is extremely advantageous. One of the concerns about encryption that often shows up, especially with if you're going to pitch it, this is coming from a tech support point of view, especially if you're going to pitch it on up the ladder that we should invest in encrypted devices, is what if we forget the password? Then all the data that's on there is lost. Like, there's no way to get back into them because they're
Sure.
ultra secure. With a management console, this provides the administrators the ability to remotely reset the password, access the device if needed, or even remotely lock the device. Someone calls in, Thursday they were traveling, Friday they get to their destination, they're like, I lost my flash drive somewhere on the flight. The admins can remotely send a command that either disables the device or potentially wipes the device entirely. And it just removes all risk of losing data for the corporation, which is a huge advantage.
So,
go for it.
I mean, just real quick, this idea that you can manage them remotely, it's great, but it also kind of brings to mind the idea of something we're all using nowadays, and you can't get around it, is the cloud, that you have things stored on a server. Maybe if you're a larger entity that you own yourself, or you rent space from whatever, Amazon Web Services or something. And this is like when you lose your phone, you have kind of the same capability. You have the ability to break your phone essentially and make sure your photos and your data don't get compromised, even if you don't have physical access to your phone. But then it's the idea of being able to back up your phone to the cloud and recover it very quickly. I mean, is this, the approach that you're selling here with DataLocker, the Iron Key hard drives and things like that, is this like a belts and suspenders kind of deal, or is this something that's kind of niche to, kind of corporate settings? I mean, why do we still have to buy external, secure hard drives when we do have things like the cloud?
That's a great question. I've found that there have been quite a few different cases of people who still need access to a physical device. Whether it's the immediacy of the files, right? They don't want to upload something and then download something, or potentially the regulations of the industry that they work in, or even just the size of the files and the accessibility of the internet in whatever use case they're in. I mean, there are people that want to. I had a case in which someone was working on a video that they were designing that they wanted to keep secure so that they didn't want it to leak out early. And they were using one of our devices to put it on the drive and encrypt it, and then they were mailing the device to someone else to review, which it's a fantastic option for them to not worry about the video leaking, it not uploading correctly, it being too huge to download with wherever this other person was, and
Right. No,
yeah.
it was just a question that popped into my mind because, I'm sure you know better than anyone that more stuff is moving to the cloud, but obviously there will be situations like the ones you just mentioned. One more thing, we'll talk about the hard drives real quick, and then we'll move on to, again, some of the questions. I noticed that a lot of these have, kind of keypads on them. Are those fully functioning keypads with passcode, with, pin codes on them? Or, that's a new feature I haven't seen on any other hard drive.
Yeah, there's a couple hard drives that we have, the DL3 line, and then also we just released a flash drive that's coming up here called the K300. That's our flash drive, and it's got a pin which you could use. It's alphanumeric, and you can create your own password to protect the device. And again, a huge advantage of the way in which DataLocker's approached it with the hardware encryption is that all the interactions of unlocking the device happen on the device itself, which means it never touches the processor, it never touches the memory of the computer, it can't be intercepted, and it keeps the device completely secure within your control.
Perfect. So, and I think we covered that encryption is good. Encryption is something that a lot of people need, and hey, if you want to be HIPAA compliant, you better get real familiar with it very quickly. Let's talk about some of the things that encryption doesn't prevent against, and this is just off the top of my head, I'm sure there are others I'm missing, but let's say people who do have legitimate access to the data, and then they, take it off of a network, some kind of insider or Trojan horse kind of deal. What are some of the situations that you need to watch out for? That encryption is not just a one size fits all, solves everything.
Yeah. So there's a couple specifically I'd say. One is encryption is good if it's enabled, right? So if you unlock your device or if you remove your encryption, or if, that we went back to that device versus file encryption. If the files are decrypted, then it's obvious it's not going to protect you. So that's one thing to keep in mind is the encryption is enabled. Again, an advantage to having hardware encryption versus software encryption is when the device is unplugged, the files are automatically encrypted. But in addition to that, so let's use a use case. You buy one of our drives, you've got it plugged into your computer, you're working on a file that's on there. Here's some things that encryption, even if assuming that the drive's unlocked, clicking on a link that you have no idea where it came from.
Right.
Maybe you're scrolling through the internet and someone sends you. All of a sudden, you get a Facebook message from someone that just they send you a link and they're like, "Hey, check this out."
That and it's funny because I won't name any names, but obviously we use Skype here for phone calls and things like that, and I make a lot of contacts through Skype, and you'd be surprised the amount of people, we talk to everyone from CEOs to product managers to PR people, of course, and I'd say about once a week I get someone who I meet through work here, and sometimes they are high-level employees of security companies. And their Skypes are the ones that send me, hey, a great new workout boosting supplement. You need to check out this link. And they send me it out of nowhere. It happens often. It's scary.
Yeah, it's crazy how often that does happen. And this is something else that encryption doesn't really necessarily help against, which is phishing attempts. That's phishing, phishing attempts, which I'm sure a lot of your listeners are familiar with, but that's people trying to get personal information about you through any means necessary. And like the sneakiness, I guess, is that a word? We'll call it a word now.
Yeah, sure, right.
These guys are getting super sneaky. Like I've seen where someone outside of an organization will send an email to someone else within the organization, pretending to be the CEO. And it'll be something like, "Hey, I need you to buy this stuff, and I need you to buy these gift cards. Let me, buy these for me as quickly as you can and use the credit card that you have on file." And right there, the user's like, "Oh, well, this seems like it's from my CEO," and they don't check, they don't look into it, they don't reach out to the CEO because they're like, "Oh man, it's the CEO. I should probably do this real quickly." And if they buy them and email them back the gift cards, there you go. Someone just made off with X number of gift cards because
So
they sent a fake email.
right. So you're saying that there's very much there's a human element to this, that you can't encrypt away someone clicking a link or someone sending a password, or just little things like that. And although I'm not sure if DataLocker is doing it, there are a number of organizations that are working on trying to use machine learning to say, all right, so normally the CEO sends emails from this computer, and instead it got sent from this computer 18,000 miles away, well, probably in space at that point, but 18,000 miles away, and hey, it's probably not the CEO. I mean, and I'm not sure what DataLocker maybe is working on behind the scenes, but there's more to the future of data security than just, having the right PIN code, isn't there?
Oh yeah, there absolutely is. And I think you hit right on it. There's the human interaction level of it that that really continues to provide chinks in the armor on that one. And I don't know that that's ever really going to go away. And that's not necessarily even a problem, because we're all humans. But it's the education, it's the awareness, and I don't know that DataLocker is working specifically on that, what you just mentioned there. I think the focus is more on encrypting the hardware and files available. But
I mean, to a point, and I'm not sure if you can talk about this, but you do have a product called DataLocker Safe Console, and I think it would do something like that. It's not automated. I think it's for I'm assuming, I haven't kind of read through this, but I'm assuming it's kind of managing your data, seeing where people are accessing it from, blah blah blah, essentially allowing you to control those hard drives and manage them. I mean, if you saw maybe a hardware that was lost get reactivated and try to access some stuff, like, hey, it may not be automated, but you'd be able to say that's not something that we should allow to happen. Like, that's within your possibility, right?
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that, because Safe Console has something, a really cool feature called geofencing, in which devices that are outside of X physical area, and you can plot that out on a map, or outside of even this IP range, this specific network, they're not allowed to unlock. They're not allowed to be connected, and that'll all show within the device logs, and it provides a lot of visibility and should raise flags that the admin would be like, this seems a little odd. I wonder why this device is trying to be accessed so many times in a region that we're not expecting.
Right. No,
and there's something else I want to go for it.
No, I was about to switch topics, so please go ahead.
I was gonna say there's something else that's coming up with DataLocker that we're planning on releasing soon, which is called SafeCrypt. And this is super exciting, because there's a lot of people that are moving data online. This is kind of getting back to you mentioned earlier. Why would we buy flash drives when we have online storage, cloud storage?
Mm-hmm.
Google Drive, Box.com, Dropbox, whatever it is. DataLocker is working on something called SafeCrypt that is a cloud encryption gateway, which means that now all the files, and this would work in conjunction with Safe Console, all the files that you have within your Google Drive or within your corporate, Microsoft OneDrive account, you can encrypt them so that you can't use no one can access these files unless they have the software installed and the encryption key, which is hugely advantageous.
Yeah, that's certainly different, because we have seen situations where people are able to get kind of access to overarching behind the scenes networks, and they're able to think of things like Yahoo, where they were able to steal like every single username, password, blah blah blah, and they were able to get into the emails. You're saying that something like you're developing a product that I guess you're coming around to the idea that you're not going to come out with the next Gmail, but you can come out with a product that's going to work with Gmail and make everyone who uses that safer. That seems to be the approach?
Yeah, and less specifically focused on the email, more focused on the files that you would store online. But yeah, that's the approach. So that even if someone, whether maliciously they got your username and password, or someone else was claiming the legal right to have access to your documents, you still got control over that. And I mean, now more than ever, there's all sorts of questions about how we're going to navigate the conversation of who actually controls the data that I have online. And this SafeCrypt, puts control back in the hands of the user.
There's an ongoing court case that is just really maybe I'll bring up after the break. But Sunil, would you mind staying over? We're about to head off into break, and we'll wrap up the conversation on the other side.
Sure, no problem.
Perfect. So everyone, music means we're going to take a break. We are talking to DataLocker. Again, if you want to find out more, DataLocker.com. Everyone, stay tuned. More Computer America after this.
Greece is cheap.
But the airfare costs a fortune.
Paris?
Not much closer, and again, airfare...
What about Puerto Vallarta?
Let's face it, flying anywhere is just too expensive.
Wait, what's this? Low-cost airlines.
With one call to low-cost airlines, you'll drastically slash your travel costs. We're talking insanely low airline prices to any of your favorite destinations. Where would you like to go? London, Rome, Costa Rica, Australia?
Wow, that's cheap.
So why wait? Call now to learn how crazy cheap it is to fly anywhere in the U.S. or international. Our prices are so low, we can't publish them. The only way to get them is to call to instantly hear the most amazing best deals on airline travel. It's that easy. So call now and start packing.
800-215-4461. 800-215-4461. 800-215-4461. That's 800-215-4461.
We are all Brother Wolf. 10 years ago, a group of locals banded together to create positive change. We took animals into our homes, held adoption events at local retailers, and talked to the community about our mission to help build a no-kill Asheville. A decade later, we have achieved so many victories for animals in need. There's been so much progress, yet there's still so much to do. As part of our year-long celebration, we encourage you to become a member of our special Compassionate Circle program. With a monthly donation of $10 or more, you will have behind-the-scenes access to the work we are doing at Brother Wolf. Our goal is to reach 1,000 members because we receive no government funding. Working together, we can help build and sustain no-kill communities. Learn more at compassionatecircle.bwar.org. We are a 501c3 tax-deductible organization.
And welcome back to the Computer America Show. It is 32 minutes past the hour as we continue on here. And by the way, if you missed any part of today's program, feel free to check out the podcast version of the show. It is simply just today's show, rebroadcast wherever podcasts are heard. So iTunes, Google Play, iHeartRadio, SoundCloud, Spreaker, what have you. We got you covered. But we continue on, and we are, of course, talking to DataLocker. And Sunil, thank you for, of course, continuing on with us. And, there's a case that's currently, I think, still unresolved. And, the details of the case get a little, not fun, but essentially there's someone who is charged with a crime, and they say that the evidence to prove that he is guilty of said crime is on an encrypted hard drive. And the court, or at least the judge, is holding him indefinitely for in contempt of court for not unlocking the hard drive or decrypting the hard drive for law enforcement to get access to the photos. And, he's the only one with that 4-digit PIN code, and otherwise it would get wiped after so many failed attempts. They're trying everything they can to work around it, but, it's one of those issues that, encryption and hard drives, like you mentioned that there was a conversation to be had about, who owns the data. And there's also a conversation being had, I think, right now in that jail cell about, how data and data management kind of work into, the Constitution, our rights and things like that. I mean, just encryption going forward. Obviously, I don't think DataLocker is going to start selling shoes. They're going to stay in the encryption business. What's the conversation do you feel that needs to be had? Is it just, you guys are going to provide the best encryption you can and let lawmakers figure it out, or how does this play out in the future?
Yeah, that's tough to know exactly how to sort that out in the future, because that conversation is rife with implications for people going forward. And I think at this moment, DataLocker's approach is to provide an excellent product that allows people to securely control their data. Obviously, the intent is to not enable people to participate in anything illegal.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, it's funny because more often than not, there's been multiple times already when working with DataLocker and helping with a lot of these different cases or support calls that I'm working with, and the line from Jeff Goldblum in Jurassic Park keeps ringing in my head. Is that your scientists were so concerned with whether or not they could that they didn't even stop to ask whether or not they should.
Right.
And it's less to do about whether or not we should have good encryption, but just, man, like technology and access to these different features is advancing at such a rapid rate that it's tough to keep up with. Where should we be? Where's the legal and moral lines in this conversation?
Well, and some of the features I was just talking about, you actually support some of them. You have a couple sections on your website for everything from energy, military, government, finance, legal, healthcare, and one of them for legal actually does have that self-destruct feature I was talking about, where you can't just start with 1111 and then go from there. You actually offer that kind of thing. So it's I'm not asking you to give DataLocker's position on the Fifth Amendment or something like that, but it's just it's interesting to me. It really is, and just to have you guys on the show talking about how you can prevent any sort of intrusion that generally entails even those by law enforcement, because they use the same tactics that the hackers would use.
Yeah. So all things being equal, the design behind the DataLocker devices is to provide security and reassurance of the data that you put on there. So actually, all of our devices come with that option to either self-destruct the device or reset the device and wipe all the data completely. And again, part of that hardware encryption piece is that software encryption allows hackers potentially, again, depending on the software, the ability to reset that counter of how many times the incorrect password's been entered, which could open the opportunity for what's called brute force attacks, which is they just continue to try a password over and over and over again until they get the right one. With the hardware encryption that we use, all the counters and all the records of how many times that incorrect password's been entered is contained on the device itself. So yeah, and depending on the device and the options you've got, you can set the actual number of times that the incorrect password can be entered on the device. But after 10 times, all the data is gone. And from, again, all things being equal, from the end user point of view, from the corporation point of view, the goal is to provide an excellent product that actually offers meaningful encryption at a practical and usable level. And what I mean by that is, back to that whole super technical aspect versus the end user aspect. You could set it to where you enter the wrong password once and it wipes. Right. But that's hardly practical for the end users. So the goal is to provide something that's simple and secure. It's simple enough that people actually want to use it, but it's secure enough to where it's actually going to provide the protection that they want.
It's funny because and my head is just full of all these different stories of where you have people, and I feel like they don't understand the idea of encryption. Like there was law enforcement with the San Bernardino shooters. They wanted to get into their Apple phones, and they simply said, "Apple, we want a version of your OS that we can upload to the phone." The phone would update with it, and it's like, we don't want you to break your encryption whatsoever. Like we don't want you to stop offering passwords. Like the only thing we want you to do is to take off the counter for the amount of wrong password attempts. And and like you hear that, and it's like, okay, law enforcement, and then Apple's like, well, the minute we take away the counter, you might as well not even you might as well not even have one, because then you can do the brute force attack. It's about what people would kind of like versus what's actually going to work. So Very, very interesting. And you know, so, you know, we actually are running a little bit over, so let's get into some of the nitty gritty before we say goodbye. DataLocker, if people wanted to buy your products, where are they sold? Because I have never seen a DataLocker, you know, kind of retail store. Where are they sold? And just some, you know, just name some of your favorite products. How much do they go for?
Yeah, you can actually find some of our products on Amazon, as well as, I believe, Office Depot. Something, and this is something that I would recommend. Make sure that if you're an end user, you buy either the basic or the personal devices. That's something that I've seen quite a few different times. Someone will go out and they'll look at our drives and they'll be like, which one do I want? And they'll look at, for example, the hard drive. So they're like, I want a hard drive and I want it to be super secure. And they see the one that's labeled enterprise, and there's an incorrect conclusion. It's like enterprise must mean more secure,
right?
Which actually enterprise just means managed only. So if you buy the enterprise device, if you don't have the management console and the license for that, you won't be able to use it at all. So if you do buy a DataLocker device, make sure if you're an end user, you buy the basic device. It's not any less secure. I get it's a little confusing there, but buy the basic device and you'll be set.
Right.
As for recommendations, if you want a device that you can put the authentication in without having to launch the unlocker utility on your machine, the DL3, the DataLocker DL3 device, that's got the keypad on the hard drive itself. That's a fantastic device. If you're more on the flash drive sort of things,
sure.
The Century One, we just released that. That's a fantastic device. That's actually, there's different levels of validation. So if you're ultra concerned about and making sure that it's the highest level of certification, that one is, and you don't even have to remember this, but it's FIPS 140-2 level 3 validated, which that's the stamp of this is super good. So
okay.
The Century One's an amazing encrypted flash drive, and then the K300's coming out soon, probably within the next couple months. And that's got a keypad on the flash drive itself. So those are some of the ones I'd recommend. And if the keypad thing it doesn't interest you for the hard drive, then go with the H300 or the H350, which again, that's the difference between the H300 is validated and the H350 has the FIPS 140-2 level 3.
Yeah, and while you were saying that, we were kind of following along with the website. So if you're watching the video portion, I mean, you know, right now we're looking at the K300 USB drive. You know, it looks you know actually pretty heavy duty, and then of course the keypad, very very cool addition as well. And hey, even a little tiny LCD screen. So very very neat there as well. But and I'll give you the last word. If people want to find out more, if they want to find the products that we were talking about, what's the best place to go, and what can they do there?
Probably the best place, again, just in general, that people can look is Amazon's going to have a lot of information, and that they can look through there if they want to see the device itself. If they have specific questions, they can hit up our contact us on our page and reach out to either our support or one of our sales reps. We've got some amazing people that are more interested in making sure that people get a device that actually provides the level of security that they're looking for and fits with what they're wanting to accomplish than just making sure people get a device.
Right.
So you can call that main number and reach out to any one of our reps, and they'd be happy to help you. And, if you call our technical support, you might end up talking to me as well.
There you go. No, very cool. And everyone, I'll say right there, again, we have a link to DataLocker.com, although personally, I just punched in Amazon space DataLocker, and hey, I found all your products right there as well. So very, very cool. And Sunil, I want to say thank you for taking your time out of your day to join us here. A lot of great information. And hey, thanks for coming on Computer America. It was a lot of fun.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
All right. And hey, and have a great day.
Thanks.
All right. Bye-bye. All right, everyone. And there you go. So if you want to find more information, again, datalocker.com or right there in the show notes. So with that being said, let's go ahead and move on to computer and technology news. And this is a segment dedicated to all things new, different, and newsworthy when it comes to technology. So this can be all encompassing. This can be business. This can be gadgets. This can be games. This can be really anything. Anything that happens to strike my fancy. And if you're watching the video portion, if you're joining us at twitch.tv/Computer America. You can join in on the conversation, suggest stories of your own, and hey, we can you can help interact with the show. It can be fun. So here we go. Computer and technology news brought to you by OWC. All right, so we only have about 15 minutes, so we're going to try to breeze through a couple of these and then see what we want to really dig our teeth into. But there's two big stories that we should definitely cover. And the first one, probably the biggest of the day, is the fact that Amazon, you know them, they own the world. Amazon confirms that an Echo device secretly shared a user's private audio. And yeah, they confirmed it. There were rumors that it happened. I was, digging through trying to find, if this was even possible. And yeah, so this is the scary part. This is the dystopian future that a lot of people were concerned about when it came to the Amazon Echo. So, Amazon confirmed an Echo's owner's privacy-sensitive allegation on Thursday, where after Seattle CBS affiliate KIRO7 reported that an Echo device in Oregon sent private audio to someone on a user's contact list without permission. Dun dun dun. So yes, not only is it listening, searching for keywords and buzzwords, but it's also listening all the time. Let's see how this happened. So this was the person this happened to, Danielle, saying, unplug your Alexa devices right now. And this was told by her husband's colleague in Seattle after he received full audio recordings between her and her husband. And that is according to the report. And the disturbed owner, who is shown in the report juggling 4 unplugged Echo devices, said that the colleague then sent the offending audio to Danielle and her husband to confirm the paranoid-sounding allegation. So they said that before sending the audio, the colleague confirmed that the couple had been talking about hardwood floors. So nothing too sensitive, not like they were talking about how to take down, take down the shadow government. But no, they were just talking simply about everyday things. And after calling Amazon customer service, Danielle said that she received the following explanation and response, saying, our engineers went through all of your logs. They saw exactly what you told us, exactly what you said happened, and we're sorry. He apologized like 15 times in a matter of 30 minutes, saying this is something we need to fix. So, a couple of things immediately come to question. First, actually, let's go a bit further into the article, and then we'll talk about our own kind of feelings on this. But Danielle next asked, wow, I'm horrible, why the device sent recorded audio to a contact. He said that the device guessed what we were saying. Danielle didn't explain exactly how much time had passed between the incident, which happened 2 weeks ago, and this customer service response. And when contacted by KIRO7, Amazon confirmed the report and added in a statement that the company determined this was an extremely rare occurrence. Amazon didn't clarify whether that meant such automatic audio forwarding features had been built into Echo devices up until that point, but the company added that we are taking steps to avoid this from happening in the future. So this follows a 2017 criminal trial in which Amazon initially fought to squash demands for audio captured by an Amazon Echo device related to a murder investigation, where eventually the company did hand over the audio recordings. So Amazon did not immediately respond to Ars Technica questions, but that's and how it was triggered. So here's the thing. I don't think it's possible. All right, it's probably possible, but I don't think it's likely that Amazon is recording every single Amazon Alexa device in the world and forwarding the data to a farm somewhere and trying to analyze everyone's private conversations all the time that are happening near an Amazon device. But I do think that these devices, even without being summoned, commanded, called, activated, whatever the word may be, does actually search for words that you are saying, and potentially, because we live in a data-driven world and ads are an important part of that world, I do think that if you talk about hardwood floors and maybe we should buy this or maybe we should do this, then maybe Amazon, who has a very clear vested interest in selling you products, would be interested in hearing about what you would like to buy or what you would like to get. And maybe something along those lines has been happening. Obviously, this is purely speculation, but something went horribly wrong, or something was going completely fine until you found out about it, that these recordings were forwarded to the wrong person. So, no idea. Obviously, Amazon has not clarified as to if they record how much, what they record, where they sent it to, why this auto forwarding feature is even built into the system. But you can be sure we're going to be hearing a lot more about this, and maybe the idea that it's along the lines of using Gmail, where if you were okay, and of course Google doesn't do this anymore, but they were crawling all of your emails for keywords. They didn't care about the content so much. They didn't care about exactly when you were having a meeting and what restaurant you were meeting at. But they did care that you were going to a restaurant and maybe you would like a coupon, or maybe you would like to go to a different restaurant that is paying Google, and that's where those banner ads are coming from. Maybe something similar technology-wise is happening with the voice part of our conversations, and now that they have access to it, and now that they have the ability to put microphones in your home, that same keyword scanning that they were doing with your emails is now happening in real time in our homes. And maybe snippets of conversation are being recorded so that they could then verify to their engineers, to their advertisers, to whatever team is working on the Alexa device, that they are collecting the proper parts of a conversation. So I don't think Amazon really cares what you had for dinner, but they do care about maybe we should get new floors. And then that's when, hey, they really reach out there. None of that is science fiction. None of that is impossible, but it's a question of, have they already started to implement it? And I think a lot of people who are more security minded than myself would immediately say, well, of course they are. So we'll see how that goes. All right. So Alexa is listening all the time. We got that. Great. Let's go ahead and talk about this one. So if you have a Samsung TV, this is, actually, no. If you have any TV, If you have any TV, well, Samsung is about to turn off your television. Only for 5 seconds. To be clear, they're turning off your television for 5 seconds. And it's a way of doing it. So this is happening in the UK, so only in the United Kingdom, but the campaign could backfire. Maybe, possibly. But they said that in this ad, look at your TV, and they said that what Samsung is going to do for their new national ad campaign in the UK is that they're going to pseudo turn off your television. They're going to play zero sound. They're going to send a completely black screen. And for the life of you, you're going to be sitting there watching your television, and then, hey, or maybe you listen to it in the background like I do, and you get nothing for 5 strenuous, anxiety-inducing seconds. And you think, did my TV just turn off by itself? Why did that happen? I have to go turn it back on. And if you're quick enough with your trigger finger, maybe, just maybe, you might accidentally turn off your television thinking that you're actually turning it on. Well, after 5 seconds, an ad comes on from Samsung saying, hey, don't forget, most of the time you're watching a black box, a black screen, a little stupid TV. And then the ad launches into the new QLED TVs that have ambient light so that, it projects lights onto the wall behind the television, supposed to make things easier to watch, and it doesn't, it's whatever. It's just a marketing thing. But they're doing all of that with a 5-second black screen buffer. And this is the quote from Samsung saying, "What will happen? Screens will buzz with static and interfere before going blank and entirely silent, leaving viewers staring into the void or searching for the remote controls for 5 long seconds. This darkness ends with text emerging, which reads, 'This is your TV screen most of the time. A void full of nothing.' It then explains the virtues of Samsung QLED technology, which is ambient mode, meaning viewers can never see a black screen again." So, yeah, there you have that. So, to make things even better, the 5-second long screen shutdowns in the first slew of ads will be supplemented with a longer 8-second blackout as part of a 30-second ad that'll appear during the final break of the Champions League final in May 26th. And when it comes to selling televisions, they say that, hey, maybe they shouldn't try to mess with something that's a good thing. And I don't know. If nothing else, we're already talking about it. There's already news stories about it. And hey, I found it interesting enough to bring up on the show. So if nothing else, it's doing its job as an ad campaign. Good job, Samsung, even if you make a couple people mad. So get ready for that. All right, so we have time for maybe one more, and one that we didn't get into yesterday. I really wanted to, probably won't be able to get into the nitty gritty, but this is cool to report. Apple's 7nm A12 processors for the 2018 iPhones reportedly start production. So this is important. A lot of times, especially with the iPhone 6, 6 Plus, 7, 7 Plus, 8, 8 Plus, the iPhone 10, a lot of them worked on the same A10 Apple processor chips. They didn't really see that major of an upgrade. I mean, some of the later phones and some of the higher end phones, of course, had faster processors. But they really weren't anything of note. They weren't, maybe 10% upgrade here and there. Nothing that you would really, be too excited for. So that was, and by the way, that was Apple's A11, and that was a 10nm processor. So the cool part about this is that 7nm, it's a shrinkage of the die, which means that they're able to fit just as many, if not more, transistors onto, transistors? Yeah, whatever. More little switches and brains onto a smaller chip, which uses less electricity and is faster to boot. Whenever these chips actually shrink from 12 to 10, from 14 to 10 to 10 to 7, that's when you really need to sit up and take notice. It's a fundamental change to the way the hardware works. And reportedly, Apple has started producing these chips. Very, very cool. And again, these are for the 2018 iPhones. So, holiday season is usually when they launch the new set of iPhones. So check that out. So Samsung announced today that it will be ready to start producing 7nm chips at scale next year. And the company has manufactured iPhone chips in the past and shared production with TSMC on the A9 chip in the iPhone 6s. Where Apple is widely expected to launch 3 new iPhone models this fall, an update to the iPhone 10, a plus-size variant, and a lower-priced device with a 6.1-inch LCD. So some new iPhones coming. We already have rumors, but one confirmed rumor is, in fact, they have started producing the 7nm technology that goes into these phones. Very important, very cool, and hey, can't wait for it. So with that being said, everyone, music means that we are just about done here. Thank you for tuning in to Computer America. Thank you for joining us. And hey, a special shout out to our guest, again, DataLocker, for joining us here on the program and talking about encryption and security and devices. A lot of fun. All right, but that's all we have for today. Tune in tomorrow as we are, of course, talking to, it's the last Friday of the month, which means we will be talking with Pop Zara Nathan Evans. That's right. So if you're looking for a more loosey-goosey kind of feel, we're going to be talking about a lot of different topics. And hey, it should be a lot of fun. Pop Zara tomorrow, Nathan Evans, tune in 4 p.m. to 5 p.m. And everyone, whether you listen live on the radio or you listen in the podcast or you watch the live video feed, however you get Computer America in your lives, thank you so much. And yeah, have a great day. So long, everyone.